And we're on. We're live. We're recording.
Yay.
I have a feeling we're going to have a really good what is it called?
Turnout?
Prep brain is 100% in effect. I can't even, I had to tell Quincy today, I'm like, okay, look, I can't even put together a coherent sentence today. Like, he was looking at me like, Mom, what are you trying to talk about?
I feel like that's me all year, though. I don't know that that ever goes away. After so many years of competing, it's like a permanent brain. I can't even use that excuse anymore.
Yeah.
My kids always thought I was drunk. They're like, "Are you drunk, Mom?" No, this is just me.
Just prep brain. Oh, we all had recordings of the things our kids say to us when we're competing. I remember the first time my son caught me. He was like 16, and I was in my heels cooking dinner, trying to practice posing, and he's like, "What are you doing? What is wrong with you?" I'm like, "Just get out and leave me alone." He was mortified. It's like, whatever.
I could
That's
totally
amazing.
see his face, Anne.
What's that?
I could see his face.
No.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. I love it.
Hey, Jen. Jen.
Hi. Hey, guys. Dog's gonna say hi.
Oh, look at that baby.
Oh.
He's sleeping.
Aw.
How's everyone's day going?
Good.
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 How's yours going?
Mine is good. We actually have our co-producer is here in town this weekend, so we are just getting work done for our show, and we have to go through the venue, the walkthrough, and all that fun stuff. So it's been good.
That's like wedding planning to the next level.
Honestly, I have so much respect for the promoters being on the other end of it because there's so much that goes into it, like months and months and months of planning.
It's exciting, though. I'm excited for you guys.
Thank you. Yeah, it's going to be a really fun show, and we're just excited that us as athletes being promoters, we know what the athletes want, so we can just do everything and to provide such a good.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to try and be there, and I'll see if I have some people, athletes.
Yeah, I already have a couple athletes I'm going to put in it, but I want to come too. So
Yeah, you better come. I want to see your face there.
yes, I want to see your face. I can't wait.
You. I haven't seen you guys in so long.
I know, it's been too long. I can't wait.
Me too.
Hold tight for like another 5 minutes and wait for all of our stragglers to pop in.
I was about to say, because I don't see anybody that sent me questions here yet.
Yeah, it always seems, if we wait till like 10 after, that's, I feel like when everybody pops on.
I think because everybody does the same thing. You're like, oh my God.
It's 5 o'clock.
Exactly. Most people wait and they think they have time, then they're like, oh shoot, it's already 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh. Let's do this really quick. Someone else?
Cosmo, come. That's the sweet dog you just saw. He's the friendly one.
How old is he, Jen?
This is a crazy one.
Oh my goodness.
This is my little baby. He's 3. Chino's 9.
Chino was Mark's?
Yeah.
Of course. It is so cute.
Yeah, they're sweet. It's funny though, because everyone is scared of him because he's like a pit bull type breed. He's American bully, but he looks so big and scary. And I'm like, I promise, he's just the sweetest baby ever. Like he's like the child. I'm like, you have nothing to be scared of. The little one is the crazy one. The little one tries to fight Chino, the big one that you just saw.
Thinks he's the boss.
Jen, is that reflective of your and Mark's standings? Like you're the feisty one and Mark is like the super calm one?
Oh my gosh, no. If you know Mark, he is not super calm at all. Mark is like the first one, like, I'll fight, I'll knock you out kind of thing. So definitely I'm chill. Mark is
Yeah, you are super chill.
Mark is definitely the feisty one.
I love it.
Love it. What are you eating?
What are you eating, Tosh?
I had buckwheat.
Oh, yum. I haven't had that in so long.
Yeah, and egg whites. And I'm so looking forward to this.
Oh, yum.
What is that?
Raspberries and strawberries.
Oh, yum. Sorry, I can't see
You're
that.
like, yeah.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
really eat a lot of fruit. I'd rather have rice cakes.
I go back and forth, but when it's so hot here, I'm like, fruit juice is so good because it's so refreshing.
I heard it was like
it's
110 there.
110 degrees here today. How is it in Vegas, Jen?
Oh my goodness, it's so hot today. It's same thing. It's like 110 here.
Yeah. It makes you angry. Tara's here too. So it's probably hotter in Phoenix where she's at than for me.
Yeah, it's
Ridiculous.
it's pretty much just like stay inside your house type of weather.
I know, right?
Just don't go outside.
Like it's so hot, you can't even enjoy it, right? You just have to sit in the AC.
I know, right? What do you guys do outside when it's so hot? I'm like, you don't go outside.
Right. Stay inside where it's air conditioned.
Exactly. You just stay inside. That's the way to do it.
All right, Anne, do you want to get started?
Yes. Miss Corinne, you go right ahead.
Yeah. So obviously our guest today doesn't really need an introduction. It's our beautiful Jen Dorie that we all love and adore. So I will just turn it over to her and let her go ahead and take over.
You guys are so sweet. Thank you so much for having me on the call and to see all your faces here. I see my clients here too. So hi. Michelle.
Hi.
I heard you guys do these every Sunday, so I thought that was super cool that you guys have that community here of all you guys tuning into that. So I'm excited to be part of it. And I know there was some questions that you guys submitted too. Let me get. My dog wants to make an appearance today too. Jean, why are you crying? Do you want me to go through like each of the questions and kind of just go through them as like talking points, like conversation starters?
Yeah, I think that's good.
Yeah? Okay, so let me pull them up. Now, honestly, there were some really, really good questions here, which I loved. So one was, for those of us who are new to the sport, do you have any tips as to how to handle the discomfort, both physical and emotional, of being heavier in our bodies during improvement season? So I think that's an awesome question because obviously it's one of those things that improvement season, when you're used to prepping. Cosmo, come here, please. Okay. We love to do this whenever I'm like getting on a call or something. Give me 1 second. Baby, why are you crying? Oh my goodness. Okay,
Take you out.
we're gonna swap.
We'll go ahead.
There we go. So one of the best things I think as to how to handle transitioning from being in prep and being so lean to going into an off season where, depending on what your goals are in the off season, you're probably going to have to be putting on some body weight, some body fat. As females, it's one of those things that, genetically, depending on how blessed you are, if you're going to stay really lean or if you're going to gain some more body fat. Me personally, I'm not an ectomorph, so I'm not a skinny person, never have been, never will be. And I think once you understand, one, like what your body type is, that will help you accept the process a lot easier. Because if you're looking at someone who is an ectomorph, so meaning naturally they're very lean, they're very skinny, they have a hard time putting on weight. And let's say you are, a mesomorph would be the body type that puts on muscle pretty fast, but you also put on body fat. Or an endomorph, for example, where you pack on body fat really quickly and it's hard to get it taken off. you can't really compare yourself to someone else. And I think that's really what makes it so hard for us to deal with it, is when we get caught up in that comparison game of looking at, so and so on Instagram, or seeing our friend or someone else on our team who might be, still super shredded and lean in their off season, and we're struggling because we might have gained a little bit of extra weight. So I think the biggest thing is just give yourself a little bit of grace first and foremost, because you just had a long prep season. Most likely you're moving into an off season, and keep in mind what your goal is, and are you doing what you need to be doing to get to your long-term goal. So I think instead of focusing only on your body from an aesthetic point of view, it's important to look at your body from a performance standpoint, from an athletic standpoint, and also just looking at long-term rather than just short-term. If your goal is to put on muscle, of course you're going to need to be putting on some weight. And it's inevitable. Some of that is going to be body fat. It doesn't have to be a ton of body fat, but you are going to have to get a little bit uncomfortable with, how much food you're eating and the amount of weight that you are gaining to be making improvements. Because if you don't end up changing your body at all throughout the off season, it's impossible to show up looking different because you look the same your entire off season. So if you're so caught up on, holding on to that staged look, you fail to see the big picture, in the sense that, when you step on stage next time, you want to show off something better, something improved. But if you never have any changes throughout your body through your off season, you've never really given your body a chance to even improve. And you really can't show up any better. So you're doing yourself a disservice by comparing yourself to other people. So for myself, I always honestly just embrace it. I like having a curvier body in the off season. Your clothes fit better, you feel better, you have energy, you have strength, you get to enjoy more flexibility with food, more outings with family and friends that you might not have the energy for in prep. So I think things like that is what I focus on, is not so much looking at your body from an aesthetic point of view. Like, don't be worried about in your check-ins if your weight's not dropping every week, because that's not the goal. So I think it's important to set out an outline for yourself of what's the goal, what's your long-term, short-term goals, and remember that you're not looking to be getting leaner every week like you were in prep. So your weight might be staying stagnant, it might be increasing, and you might not really see any changes in your off season because there's not going to be huge changes because you're not peeling off the body fat. So remembering that when you're checking in with your coach, that you don't have to be seeing, the scale dropping every week and your body getting leaner and tighter. You're probably going to be seeing the opposite, but is that conducive to your goal? So I think really just coming to terms with, again, the same way you embrace the suffering in prep, embrace being a little bit uncomfortable in your off season, knowing that it's for a greater purpose, it's going to pay off, and that that's what you need to do. And kind of just think of it more of a performance standpoint than an aesthetic standpoint, because obviously in our sport, we're so focused on the aesthetic standpoint, what we see on stage, like what is put up there. And in the off season, it's hard to not identify ourselves as being a competitor, when we don't look necessarily like we do on stage, because a lot of times people are only seeing us on stage. For myself as well, my stage photos are everywhere. In my off season, I don't look that lean, obviously. It's just not, one, I wouldn't want to, and two, it's just not something that's maintainable or sustainable, especially for a female. So some people who don't understand, they might look and be like, well, how come you don't look like this? And it's almost like it's hard to not be affected by that sometimes, but I think you have to not internalize it and just remember that, your family or friends, they might not understand, and they might say things that maybe come across the wrong way, but they probably didn't mean it any harm. And I know, depending on culture too, like sometimes Mark's parents, it's funny, his parents are from Trinidad and Tobago, and his dad is Chinese as well. So his dad will be like, oh, Jen, like your face got fat again in the off season, like it looks good. And I'm like, oh, thanks. Yep, that's great. Or he'll be like, oh, like your butt got fat again. And I'm like, and Mark will be like, he doesn't mean in a bad way, because like in, you know what I mean? He's like for them, like that's a good thing, that's attractive. And for most people, a lot of times they say things like that, and it's easy for us to internalize like, oh, they just called me fat, which no, they didn't. It's just a cultural thing, especially if you're Italian. I have one of my best friends is Italian, her Nonna. When I'm super lean, she's like, oh my gosh, you're sick, you're dying, like come, you need to eat some food, I'm so scared for you. And I was like, no, I'm okay. So I think just kind of not internalizing things that other people might say or think. And I think the best thing, honestly, for myself has just been honestly just let go of caring so much about what other people think, because that's really what's going to hold you back. And if you're uncomfortable in your off season, it's probably not you being uncomfortable with yourself, it's you being uncomfortable with the thoughts of what other people think of you. And I think that's our biggest critic is, what other people think or what other people see, or, when you go back to the gym and you've gained some body fat after, being in a competition prep for so long, you're worried that people are going to see you and think that you fell off or something like that. But it's part of your goal and it's necessary, and not everyone has to understand. It's just, you have to understand the goal. You have to know why you're doing what you're doing. And that's all that matters. So as long as you are comfortable and you're understanding of why you're doing what you're doing, it's really not a big deal if you gain, 5, 10, 15 pounds, whatever it might be, because it's different for everyone. But I also would try and have that conversation with yourself and your coach to set those boundaries of where do you feel comfortable and what do you need to do to be conducive to the long-term goal, and try and find a middle ground. So if you really need to put on some weight because you have to gain a lot of muscle, you're probably going to have to gain a little bit more and eat more food than what someone who doesn't have to gain muscle. If you're focused on conditioning, you probably don't want to be getting up too high in body weight and body fat, because it's not really conducive to your goal. You're only going to have to pull all that weight off again. So I think that getting heavier in your off season can be kind of double-sided coin. It could be you might need to do that, or you might need to take a step back and see, are you really fueling your body properly in the off season, or are you treating the off season as a free for all? Because that's when it could be something that's negative, obviously. Gaining body fat and gaining weight isn't a bad thing, but if you're not treating your body with respect and nourishing your body in the off season and acting like an athlete, you can't expect to just do a 16-week prep and show up as an athlete who's going to win if you haven't prepped like that, as a lifestyle. So I think that's probably one of the best ways to look at it, is kind of look at, first and foremost, what are your goals long term? What is it going to take to achieve that? And then know why you're doing what you're doing, and make sure that you're checking in with yourself and your coach that you're on track, mentally and physically for what you need to do. And if that means gaining some weight, then it's not the end of the world. It's a temporary thing, and just learn to accept your body with more curves, and focus on the positives. Like I said, energy, more strength, more food you get to eat, more flexibility, more social outings and gatherings with your friends and family. And I'm sure your friends and family probably appreciate the couple of extra pounds on you a lot more than you realize. So I don't know if any of you guys have anything you want to add to that, or any questions, or we can keep moving on kind of forward from questions if you want. If you guys want to do it like an open discussion, I'm game for whatever.
Good. I think, Jen, you had a really good point about, talking to your coach and knowing where you are. I mean, I think some people just, like, everybody is so different, and people thinking that, oh, it's off season. I need to gain 15 pounds. That's what I should do. Well, like me personally, the last thing I need is more muscle on my upper body. So I have no business gaining 15 pounds in the off season. It's like everyone's really, really different. And then I've got poor clients that are just struggling with the idea of eating and putting on body fat when they're like, well, no, I want to get lean. I want to do a show. And they're not understanding that they need to, I guess my question would be, or where I struggle, is getting some of my newbie clients to understand why they need to put on the weight in order to gain muscle.
Yeah.
I feel like that's an ongoing battle with a lot of first-time competitors, because in their head, they want to start prepping and they want to look like you, it's like, it doesn't work that way.
I totally understand that. I think that's why it's important to be transparent, especially like me in my position, to be transparent that, like, I'm not only posting stage photos or only posting like throwback pictures. Like, I post current how I look, my workouts, like all that kind of stuff, so people can see, even when you're at the top, like, we still have like normal bodies in our off season, because it's normal to gain body fat to a certain extent. And just, directing them there, like, go look at the top Olympians and the pros, and like, they're doing the same thing. They have to gain body fat too. And in an off season, for most people, you're going to have to gain some weight back, just because it's usually not sustainable. I know for myself, like, it would not be sustainable for me to stay at that weight year round. It would not be possible, and I wouldn't want to.
Yeah.
Because obviously it takes so much work to get there. That's why we do what we do, because it's the elite of our sport. It's that 1%, but it's not something that we can maintain year round. And I think it's hard sometimes to get clients to understand that, but just kind of explain to them that it's like, take it 1 week at a time. Don't worry so much about like a year from now or 6 months from now. Like, focus on today only, or this week. Break it up into small chunks. That's kind of the best way to handle everything in our sport, to be honest, just so it's doable. Whether it comes to cutting down or gaining body fat, obviously you don't want to jump up so fast so quickly. So explain to them that it's going to be a gradual process. You know, if we're trying to get you to build muscle, I don't want you to just gain 10 pounds next check-in. Like, that's obviously not the goal. It's going to be maintaining a body fat, but increasing your muscle mass. And in order to gain muscle mass, you have to gain weight. How else are you going to do that if you're scared of seeing the scale go up? So I think, like, breaking it down to your clients and letting them know that, you know, we all kind of have to do this to some extent. And if you're trying to gain muscle, the only way to do that is to be, you know, eating more food, be in a surplus, make sure that you're training heavy enough to grow and you're training smart enough to grow, and that it's impossible to gain muscle without seeing the scale go up at all. And just kind of lay out, sometimes it helps to like almost lay out like the groundwork for them and like lay out like the bigger picture. So show them like, here's what you're going to be doing and here's why. Because a lot of times if we just tell your client like, no, you need to, you know, eat more food and do this so we can gain muscle, they might not understand that why. So kind of laying out like, even if you have to break it down into like a diagram or something, like we're doing this to get to point A, then once we get to point A, we're going to do this to get to point B, and giving kind of like an overview of the big picture, that might help.
Yeah, a little roadmap.
Exactly. Sometimes it helps because sometimes it's hard when, you know, they just see, okay, like I'm going to gain weight now, but like, then what? So maybe if you give them a time frame of like, this is a good chunk of time, let's play it by ear, but let's aim for this amount of time. And then we'll see where you're at. You know, this is exactly what I want you to focus on, whether it's like a specific body part or workouts or depending on the client, different things. Sometimes giving like something specific each week to focus on might be helpful too. So they're not so focused on the aesthetics. Like I said, like focus on, you know, like how's your energy this week, or maybe change their check-in questionnaire. So it's less focus on like how they look, but more on how they feel and performance. That might help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you
Okay.
have questions, anyone? Nope.
Okay. So the next one was, with regard to muscle development, what top 3 things would you prioritize as most important? So easy: sleep, quality food, quality training. So honestly, there's nothing better than just laying down a good foundation of like your nutrition and your training is a foundation of everything in this sport, and sleep, of course, too, because whether you're trying to lose body fat, diet and sleep, and then, you know, cardio as an addition there, or trying to gain muscle, it's your body needs rest and recovery as one super important thing. And if you try and skip out on that, it just won't be a complete circle the way it needs to be. So I think quality food, nutrition matters. You know, obviously the quality of your food matters as well, because you want to make sure you're getting in quality, like whole foods, nutrient dense foods to fuel your body. And then of course, making sure that your training is conducive to what you want. If you're trying to gain muscle, make sure that you are, one, you're feeling the specific muscles you're trying to train working. So mind muscle connection, that you're challenging yourself with progressive overload, that you're not just staying at, you know, the same weight every single week for months at a time, because you're not going to grow like that. You're going to need to always be, you know, pushing yourself, challenging yourself in the gym. And that might mean having, you know, a personal trainer in the gym with you. I train with a trainer twice a week, and it's great for me because it just helps push me and it helps keep me on top of things. So some people need that extra motivation, or some people just like to have that structure. I think it's really helpful if you have access to have someone in the gym with you, or even just a training partner, anything like that, to keep you on track and to push you. And if you can push yourself, then that works too. But I think like just being really conscious of everything that you're doing and being intentional with your training is important. I would say that's probably number one. So you don't want to just go into the gym just, you know, to get the workout done. You want to go in there with intention to train that specific body type. And what are you trying to do to improve that body type? Like I always think of, when I'm on stage, what I want that muscle to look like when I'm training. And that way I can really focus. You know, if I'm doing something for glutes, I'm thinking in my back pose, how do I want this to look? If I'm doing shoulders, I'm thinking like, how do I want this to look? And that way you can really visualize, you know, what you're trying to do when you're training. So you're not just going in there and just doing the workout that was written out for you, but there's no intent behind it. And, you know, each rep doesn't really, there's no intention behind each rep. So like make every rep count, make every workout count, because every week is one step closer or it's one step back based on how hard you're choosing to work. So sleep, quality food, quality training sessions, probably top 3 for that.
Love it.
And let's see, top 3 favorite glute exercises. Hip thrust probably is number 1. for like overall mass and glute development, I would say probably like hip thrusts, I think, are definitely a number one. I think you get the best glute engagement, and most science has and studies have shown that as well for hip thrusts. They're kind of the king of glute development. But I also think lunges are a super underrated glute development movement. And anything that's unilateral single leg is going to be great for balance and symmetry. And for glutes, I really like to do a lot of single leg stuff. So lunge variations, I love. I think they're great and underrated. Like I said, single leg press, I love to do as well. I feel like if you have the one that's the upright one, it's, how do I explain this? It's like the one that's the plate loaded, it's you're sitting upright and you're sliding downwards instead of having the weight on top of you. Those ones I love to do single leg with that. So you just put your one foot on, let the other foot hang right through underneath where the pad is that your foot goes. And I find that targets like your glute hamstring tie-in area super well if you're focusing on pushing through your heel. And then probably kickbacks, basic, but they work. And that's the thing, like you do still want to make sure you're doing isolation work, because especially if you're trying to carve out those details, you know, that isolation work does matter, that you're not going to be able to get the same glutes in, you know, a hip thrust or a squat necessarily as you can with a kickback. So I do think that that matters to have a combination of obviously compound movements, but also having those isolation movements in there. But probably hip thrust, lunges, single leg press, and kickbacks. I could choose lots more than that, but that would probably be like my top. It's a top 3, but that's top 4 for you. So just because I feel like if you can hit your glutes from different angles, that's important too. So if I usually do 2 or 3 like glute days a week, one might have like a hamstring day, sometimes quads, depending on if I'm including quads or not. So focusing on like hitting it with different amounts of volume in different sessions and different exercises, so you can get your glutes from different angles. So you're not just doing, you know, the exact same, obviously doing your workouts the same for a multitude of weeks on your phase of your programming. But if you have 2 glute days a week, do different exercises in those 2 exercises that you're doing a week. So that way you have a variety of training, and also you can be hitting your glutes from different angles. You can be doing different forms of the exercise, even if it's something like choosing a dumbbell instead of, you know, the Smith machine or the hack squat machine, because you're still going to be able to hit your glutes from a different angle. And kind of changing up the amount of volume that you're doing as well, I think is important. So maybe having like one heavier day and one more volume day as well. Top 3 favorite shoulder exercises. I feel like with shoulders, honestly, it doesn't have to be complicated. And I think people always look for like special things for shoulders, and it's honestly just like a lateral raise until the death of you. That's the best thing you can do, like lateral raises with proper form. And the best tip for lateral raises, think of reaching out instead of reaching up. So when you're going like this, don't worry so much about coming up high, because then you're lifting your traps. Think of going like out as far as you can. That way you're going to focus on really hitting your shoulders, keeping your traps out of it. So I would say lateral raise for sure. There's so many different variations you could do: seated, standing, there's the machine, you could do bent arm, you could do straight arm, you could do leaning, cables. I love to do drop sets of lateral raises. So start out heavier and just drop the weight down, like go down the rack of dumbbells. And then shoulder press, I feel like is great too, just for overall mass of your shoulders, depending on how you do it. I like to do it a reverse way on a machine press, because I feel like it takes the pressure off my shoulder joint personally. And then if I had to choose one more, probably something for rear delts. A lot of people neglect rear delts and shoulders. I actually do rear delts on my back days and my shoulder days, just to get that extra punch on my back days, because you're hitting your rear delts for most of your back exercises anyways, especially if you're doing anything with a wider grip. So I like to incorporate like face pulls and either reverse pec deck or just a rear delt fly with dumbbells on my back days as well. And usually I like to superset those, or even like some type of a banded face pull is really good to do. If you do reverse pec deck, you can do that a little bit heavier, and then you could superset right into banded face pulls to failure, and you just have like a band and just pull it straight out across like that. And it seems easy, but it'll fatigue your rear delts really well. And if you do it properly, you'll get a really, really good pump that way. If you hear my dog snoring, it's because He has to sit right here. You have a Frenchie, you understand the neediness. He has to be touching me at all times. The next question, how has coaching yourself through prep changed since experiencing Team Atlas? I feel like I always get this question. I think it just, when it comes to coaching yourself, you just have to be careful and mindful of, be conscious of, are you the type of person who can coach yourself? Because most people do better with a coach. I think it's important to have a coach. And if you don't have a coach, then have a second eye. So my husband is my second eye, him and I kind of go back and forth with stuff. And I'm not someone who needs the accountability. I will not cheat on my diet. I will not skip cardio. I will not mess up anything on my own. So even when I did have James from Team Atlas as my coach, I was not someone who needed hand holding. So I think I know that I'm the type of athlete that I don't need the accountability, and I know I will stick to my plan 100%. That's why I'm able to do it myself. But obviously I have people in my corner who are there to keep me accountable and there to be a second eye for me, so I don't do it all alone. I think it's important to have someone, especially those last few weeks of prep when our brains get funky and tell us all sorts of weird things about how we look, and we don't really we see ourselves through distorted goggles the last couple weeks of prep. So having someone to help keep you on track, keep you grounded and realistic about how you look is really important, because sometimes we always think we're not lean enough, or we can't carb up this much, we might need more or less. So having my husband, obviously he's a coach as well, so he helps to coach me, and he kind of just will shoot ideas back and forth, and I'll be like, I'm gonna do this, what do you think of this? And he'll be like, yes or no, or he'll kind of say to me like, okay, like let's go, like time to drop. I hate when he says this, but he's like, time to drop the hammer, like let's go. And I'm like, okay, I dropped the hammer, like, but thanks. So it's one of those things, but I think it's important to have someone to kind of be there to who isn't afraid to be hard on you and tell you like, you gotta pick it up a little bit, because if you're coaching yourself and you start to get complacent, it's a learning process, of course. So just making sure that you're not, if anything, I'm probably harder on myself than I need to be. So some people might try and go easy on themselves if you're coaching yourselves. I think it just depends on the person. That most people, I would say, do much better with a coach to have that guidance, because with a coach, you're going to have, that guidance, that support, that accountability that on your own, you won't have the same thing of. Especially like with our Fit Body Fusion family, we have such an amazing team of coaches, and it's just such an amazing community with everyone, which is what I love. And I have Jamie in my corner too. She helps me out and she's always there for me if I need anything. So I'm lucky I have so many people to bounce ideas off of, and, to send my check-ins to be like, hey, what do you guys think? And help me out. So I really don't do it alone, I wouldn't say. But yeah, that's kind of the only thing that's different is just, I think last year there's probably a little bit more pressure knowing that I was kind of coaching myself, just from other people like looking to see how things were going to look. So that would probably be the only really thing that was different. Otherwise, I've always done my own training since 2018. So I've always kind of chosen my own foods that I eat and my training and all that stuff. So it really wasn't different for me. I still do check-ins every week. I have a spreadsheet that I log everything on for myself for my preps. I still send check-ins to my husband every week, and I treat it as if I'm a client of my own, essentially. And I try and step back, without having any type of bias of myself, and have him do the same thing, so I can look at myself as a client instead of looking at it as myself. So I think it's hard sometimes to do that and just be able to take yourself out of that own personal bias that you have to look at yourself. So I probably wouldn't recommend coaching yourself for most people, unless you're someone that has a lot of experience. I mean, I've been competing this is my 8th year competing. So I've had a lot of experience prepping and prepping others. And I think that's why I'm able to do it. But like I said, it's never done alone. It's always with a team of people behind us and people to bounce ideas off of.
Here's a question for you, Jen, sort of on that topic of you saying, like, what do you think is the best strategy, either for yourself or for clients, of getting them through those last few weeks where they're so in their head? One day I'm not lean enough, the next day I don't have enough muscle, oh my gosh, now I'm too fat. I mean, it's every day. And because we've all been there on prep, where you'd spend those last 2 weeks like, I'm too skinny, I'm too fat, I'm not ready, I'm too lean, I'm too, and every day like,
oh yeah.
So
It's honestly like every 5 minutes. It's like I look great, then it's like, oh, I look like shit. I can't go on stage. But honestly, I tell my clients, like, do not listen to anything that your mind tells you from this point on. Like, just turn your brain off. Don't think, just do. Like, that's my motto is in prep. Don't think, just do. Because if you let yourself think, like, you know, for anyone really, like even when it comes to your cardio or your diet or your training, if you start thinking, oh, I'm so tired and all these things, you're going to believe it. And then you're not going to want to get up and go do your cardio. So before you even convince yourself of anything, just do what you have to do. That's it. Don't think about it. Don't worry about it. That's what your coach is there for. Let your coach do the worrying for you. And I tell my clients, like, you don't need to do the worrying. That's my job. All you have to do is follow your diet, follow your training program, do your cardio every single day, give 100% to everything that you do. And that's all that you can do. You can't worry about who shows up. You can't worry about how you're going to show up because we don't have control over what happens, you know, from now until then. The only thing you have control over is your attitude and your effort. So show up with a good attitude. And that's really the only thing you can control. And just don't think, don't listen to your mind. Because like you said, it changes. One day we're like, oh, we feel great. The next day we're not lean enough or we don't have enough muscle. So just turn your brain off at that point. Once you get to, like, for me, it's 6 weeks out that I have a freak. Every single prep, 6 weeks out, I have this little mini freak out that I'm like, 6 weeks, I'm not gonna be ready. Like, what am I thinking? I can't go on stage. Like, it's every single prep I've ever done since I started. So I usually know at that point, like, I pick up on it now because at least I'm aware of it. I'm like, okay, this is my usual 6 week freak out. Like, I'm not gonna worry about it. And just think, like, when you have those freak out moments, kind of ask yourself, am I being 1000% on my nutrition? Am I being 1000% with giving my full effort to my cardio and my training sessions being intentional? Am I doing my posing? You know, am I doing everything that I need to be doing? And if yes, then you have absolutely nothing to worry about because you can't control it. I tell my clients always, like, focus on the controllables and let go of the rest. Focus on what you can control. If you can't control it, don't worry about it because it's silly to waste your time and your energy when instead of worrying, you could put that energy into something productive, like, you know, posing or extra, you know, maybe not necessarily extra cardio, but like putting that energy into your cardio or doing something that's going to be conducive versus sitting there and comparing or worrying.
Yeah, being more intentional.
Mm-hmm.
I always tell myself, don't feel, execute. Don't feel, just execute. You're like, turn into a robot and just don't feel anything, just execute it.
That's exactly what it is. Because once you start to realize, like, sometimes if you're doing a lot of cardio, you're on low food and you start to think about what you're doing, it's almost like, oh my gosh, like, this is so hard. I can't do this. Like, I'm tired. Or so I just try and look at everything as a challenge. So it's exciting. Like, I can't wait to see when your food drops, like, oh, I can't wait to see what progress I have this week because I know this is conducive to my goal. When your cardio gets sucks, just be like, you know what, I can't wait to crush this cardio because I'm so excited to see what progress I bring next week. And I know this is conducive to my goal.
Yeah.
So I think that's important. And even with, I had a class the other day and she was saying, you know, oh, I'm just having a hard time that I have such a long summer ahead of me prepping. And I have to, you know, watch other people enjoy their food. And I said, well, if you don't do this, don't do it. Like, it's no one's holding a gun to you. Like, you don't have to do it. If you think it's like going to be so miserable, then maybe it's not for you to do, you know, maybe right now is not a good time. So I think, like, having that mentality of this is a privilege to prep, you know, we choose to do what we do. No one is forcing you to. And if you don't like it, or if you can't do it, then just choose not to do it and maybe choose something else. And it might sound like a harsh thing to say, but if you're going to sit there and complain about having to do cardio that you choose to do, that you get to do, and having less food to eat that you choose to put less on your plate, you know, there's people who don't have that option and they are hungry because they don't have the choice. So I think if we, you know, choose to be hungry, we can't complain about it. And don't be miserable about it to people around you because it's like they're not choosing to do it, you are. So I think it's so important, just like reframing your mindset for anything, even your cardio, like not like, oh, I have to do all this cardio. It's like, even just if you sometimes like break it into something really simple and with being grateful for the everyday things that we take for granted, like the fact that we're able-bodied enough to be able to do cardio, you know, the fact that you can make the time or find the time to do your cardio, that's a luxury that some people will never have the opportunity to have, you know, to even walk or to let alone to run, to do their cardio. So I think sometimes when you break it down into realizing like how grateful we should be for things like that we're complaining about, that helps a lot. Instead of, oh, I have to do my cardio, I have so much cardio to do, I get to do my cardio.
Get
Or
to, yeah.
you choose, like prepping is a luxury. It's something that we choose to do. It's not something that we're forced to do. You know, we're not hungry because we don't have food on our plate. We're choosing to put less on our plate. So you just have to keep that in mind. Just to not, I know it's hard and obviously we all get hungry sometimes, but just reminding yourself that you choose to do this and that you want to do this. And if you don't want to do this, don't do it.
Right.
And somebody like, I can't do it. I'm like, okay, so don't do it then. And then they're like, well, I'm like, oh, okay, so you can. It's with myself sometimes, and I'm like, oh, you know, and you just get like really frustrated that you're so tired, you're so hungry, and you get exhausted at points in prep that I'm like, oh, I can't do this. And I'm like, well, I choose to do it. So either suck it up and get it done or quit. And then you can decide to live with the fact that you chose to quit on yourself. So I think it's one of those things that the mental aspect is so important, that me and Jamie talk a lot about like reframing your mindset. And I think that that's so important in this whole fitness industry, but especially when you're prepping, whether it's in the off season, you're really, really hungry, or when you're 2 weeks out, or when you're 8 weeks out, or when you're 16 weeks out, no matter what, like always just having a perspective of gratitude and being excited about what you're doing and remembering your why, because we all got into this because we love it. So don't lose that passion, that love for it just because it gets hard. Embrace the fact that it's going to be hard and know that you're doing something that a lot of people can't. So I think that's kind of the fun part about it.
Hashtag embrace the suck, right?
Totally embrace the suck. Like, I know I have to suffer in prep to get stage lean. Like, there's at least 3 weeks of like really, really tough suffering for me. And it's like right now being like full blown off season thinking about it, I'm like, oh, I'm so not excited for that. Like, oh, how am I going to do that? But once you get into that, like obviously we ease into that. And once you get into that zone mentally, there's no better feeling than when you're in prep and you're so like zoned in and focused that like nothing matters, nothing can touch you or phase you. And it's just, that's the best feeling. So I think mentally when you're so zoned in and you know, like you're so laser focused on that goal and you're willing to do just anything and everything, and you don't care how much it sucks or how much it hurts or how hungry you are, you're just willing to get it done. That's the best feeling. You just feel like you're invincible. So I do love that feeling. Let's see. So next question. What is the hardest struggle for you through your off season with your mind, body, and soul? I love this one. So I think the hardest thing about off season, kind of like we've touched on a little bit, is just that initial acceptance phase that, like right now, for example, like I'm loving my life, living my life, enjoying myself. I feel great. My energy is amazing. My digestion is awesome. I'm super happy with how I look and how I feel. So I think once you get to that point where you get into a good groove of your off season, it's easy to enjoy your off season, and you know you're being intentional with what you're doing, and it's going to get you to where you want to be next time you step on stage. But I think it's just that initial kind of adjustment phase going from a prep into an off season that's hard, because once you're into that routine, you're into that groove, you're totally fine. It's just that initial, post show into off season phase when you see, the scale start to go up a bit, you see your face start to fill out a little bit again, less diet phase going on, and your lines start to slowly disappear a little bit and you see more fullness. And I think especially if you've done a really long prep, that's probably the hardest thing to kind of adjust to, seeing your body change. But once you just mentally decide that, you know what, I don't give a bleep about what anyone else thinks about me, because it's kind of like you're the only person you have to owe anything to. You don't owe anything to anyone else to look a certain way, to do anything else. So once you get over the idea of like caring so much about what other people think about you, adjusting from being in prep to going into an off season, it's just that little bit here that's hard. And once you get into your off season and you decide to, once again, like reframe your mindset that you know what you're doing, you know why you're doing it. And if you have to gain body fat or gain weight, it's part of your plan. It doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. And I think that that's the biggest thing, is just most people get so caught up on what other people think or how they look in their off season to other people. And it does, I think it's hard not to fall into that trap. Of course, it would get to me sometimes as well. And then I just kind of was like, if I would, not want to post something or not want to like be seen somewhere, I was like, why? Like, why do I care? I was like, I have nothing to prove to anyone but myself. I'm the only person who has to approve of myself, and that's it. And I think once you just let go of it, it's just so much easier to enjoy yourself, that you have nothing to prove to anyone. As long as you know what you're doing and what you're doing is for you, that's all that matters. Like, it's your life, it's your body, and it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks or says or wants you to look like or anything like that, because you don't have to live your life on anyone else's terms. So I think, again, like, letting go of the thoughts and the caring about other people think, don't compare yourself, and just remind yourself of what you're doing and why you're doing it. That's probably the best way to adjust into an off season. And the hardest things to get through is, like I said, that like little bit here, going from being so lean right into an off season. That's the only thing that I find is tough. And then obviously having that itch to get back on stage once you're in a full blown off season and you start to go to the shows and you see other people prepping and you want to get into a prep yourself. It's hard not to want to just jump into a show sometimes or jump back into a prep. And sometimes I have to tell athletes, like, no, slow your race, like, slow down. We still have room that we got to improve. Like, I know you're excited to get back on stage, but it's not going to be conducive for us if we cut down that time. So just being honest with yourself about how much you've progressed in your off season, and is it actually a good time for you to jump back into a prep, or are you just itching to get back on stage because you saw your friends prepping? And next question was, you have more experience with female athletes and Mark has more experience with males. Do you and Mark help each other with other clients? Yes, 100%. So I refer a lot of my clients out to my husband, Mark, as well, just because that way I can still kind of help him out with them. And for myself, I usually don't take on male clients. I have a couple. And if I need help with, one of mine is a men's physique guy, actually. Mark will help me out with his posing, and vice versa. Almost all of his clients, I always like kind of jump in and help them out with, whether it's like, if they start to get in their head, sometimes I'll be like, give me the phone, I'm going to send them a voice note or something. And then that way they're like, he's saying something, they won't believe it, but if I say it, they'll believe it. So sometimes I'll just send them a message, or like I'll help out with their posing. He'll send me, their posing videos, or he'll show me their check-in, and I'll say like, oh, have them do this or this for their posing, or maybe you should do this. So we definitely bounce ideas back and forth, and I can help him out, whether it's like the mental aspects, because obviously females, we understand each other more than males understand us. So with that, I can help put things into perspective with him. But I've been coaching for a really long time, so he has a lot of with males and females, and he's also got to see pretty much all of my as a pro. So he's got to learn a lot through trial and error with me as well. This one says, can you tell us more about your journey? How and when did you start, and what kept you going? So I started, I was, I think 16 when I started going to the gym, and I was in high school, and I just had, there was like, they gave students a free membership during the summer at like Good Life, which is just like the big commercial gym in Canada. So I would just go there and just kind of do the random, like they had the machines in order. You would do like the loop of machines for like, they would just have like the beginning when you first walked in, it would have numbers on them, and you could go through each machine as like a circuit almost for like an intro to training. And I would just do the elliptical and the treadmill and stuff like that. And I just enjoyed going because I thought it was fun. It was something to do after school. Me and my sister would always go together. And I just met a lot of really awesome people at my gym. I had a really good community of friends there. So I think for me, it was probably the community of the people at my gym that attracted me to keep going. Because it was kind of a social thing as well. And I just got to meet so many friends there that it was fun to go to the gym after school and, see all my friends there. And then also just seeing my body start to change. I felt good and I looked good. And it was always exciting for me to, keep improving each week. When I first was training, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. It was just like following bodybuilding.com, like Dana Lynn Bailey's shoulder workout on bodybuilding.com, or like watching YouTube videos of what to do and just trying to train as heavy as I could. It's probably not the best now that I look back on it. But just enjoying, like, really like getting into the gym and just training and lifting hard and having fun. And there was a men's physique competitor at my gym, and he came up to me one time and was like, what are you training for? Like, you're here every day. You train so hard. Like what are you doing? Are you doing a competition? I was like, what's a competition? Like, I had zero clue whatsoever. And I think I was 17 at the time. And you had to be 18 to compete. So he told me about it. I looked it up and I saw you had to be 18. So I was like, you know what? That'd be cool to do, like maybe in the distant future or something. So I was just like, let me just act as if I'm prepping. So when I turn 18, if I want to, I could do a show. So I pretty much just prepped for like a year ahead of time, just like training intentionally and like being really strict on point with my diet. And then I ended up getting a local coach who had just turned pro, and she helped me a lot. She was awesome. We became really good friends. And I just jumped into a show and I ended up winning the overall at my first show. And I was like hooked after that. It was just so much fun. There was so many points in my first prep that I was like, why am I doing this to myself? This is horrible. This is just like terrible suffering. Like, why would people like put themselves through this? Just because your first prep, like you don't really know what to expect. And it's just, everything just comes and like smacks you in the face basically. And you're like, whoa, what just happened? And then you get on stage and you feel that adrenaline rush on stage, and you feel like that accomplished moment and that proud moment, knowing that you pushed your way to get there. And I just loved it. So I ended up doing another show, like another local show, and I won the overall there. And then there was the provincials and then the nationals. So we had 3 levels in Canada to move up to. So then I had gone on to do provincials and I won the overall there. And then I went to do nationals, and I got first call outs and I was 6th, and I was crushed because it was my very first year competing. I was 18 and I had just won overall at every single show that I did for 5 shows in a row. And then I show up at nationals and I just get crushed, and these girls looked incredible. And I was like, oh my goodness, like, I can't believe, I was just so upset. And then I was like, you know what? Like, I'm going to work so hard that I can step on stage next year for nationals and be just like undeniable. I want to step on stage and be first place. That was my goal. So I just took an off season, got back to work. I made sure every single workout, my goal was clear in my head of what I wanted to do. And then the next year, it was in New Brunswick, I think. And I ended up winning my class, but not the overall. So in Canada, there was only 1 national show a year and 1 pro card per division at the show. So only the overall bikini winner would win the pro card. So there was, I think, 2 pro cards a year they handed out. So I just missed that one. Laura Lee actually had won her pro card that year at nationals. And I was like, okay, well, I'm not stepping on stage again until I'm undeniable that I'm the winner. Like, that's my goal. So I took another year off. I just focused on making improvements. And then I stepped on stage again for nationals, and I ended up winning my pro card that year. So it was my 3rd national show and my 3rd year competing. And then I, same thing, took a year off before I did my pro debut because I wanted to come back and make a statement and just like show up really, like, really show up as myself, doing well as a pro, not just showing up on stage. Because I had just turned pro, and there was actually a Toronto Pro Show a couple weeks later, and some people had said, like, why don't you do it? That'd be awesome. And I was like, I'm not ready for that. I know there's levels to this, and I have to make sure to like improve and really show up. Like, I didn't feel like I was ready to step on stage with the pros until I took an off season to really be intentional and show up even better. And then I really had no plans with anything as a pro. It was kind of just like, well, I guess I got here, this is pretty cool, and I'll just see what happens. And I really just wanted to get my face out there. I was planning on doing a couple shows in the States just to go on vacation hereafter, because I'm like, oh, that'd be so much fun. I could do Tampa and just be in Florida, or like go to Vegas and have a vacation there. And I ended up qualifying for the Olympia, and I did not plan to or expect to. And then I was kind of just like, how is this real life? Like, I couldn't even believe myself. I was like, did this just happen? And I remember saying to my sister, like, I might actually like have a shot at this. Like, this is so crazy, like I might be able to like win the Olympia some year. And I remember saying that to her, and she brought up to me this past year at the Olympia. She wrote it in our birthday card because it was my birthday this year on the Olympia, and we're twins. So she wrote it in my card, like, remember when you said this? Well, your dream came true, kind of thing. So it was really full circle for me. And I remember my first year going to Olympia, I had no expectations. I was just so like excited to be there. I was just trying to soak everything in. There's just so much to soak in that I was just like, is this even real life? Like, I still, to now, even this year's Olympia, it's the same feeling. Like the past 4 Olympias that I've gone to, it's just the same as each one. Because I remember I used to watch the live stream. I used to log on like all the time on like Saturday night on my computer and watch the girls competing on stage. Like when Ashley won, when Courtney won, when Angelica won. And I was just in awe of these physiques. Like, these girls are absolutely incredible. And now that I get to be signing up on that stage, it's just super full circle for me. So it's definitely cool, and it's definitely been a journey that I'm super grateful for, because you learn so much along the way. You get to grow so much as a person and meet so many amazing people. I've met probably the majority of my very close friends, obviously my husband, and most people that I would consider family in this industry and throughout competing. So I think that there's just so much opportunity for, you know, everyone to make like lifelong family and friends in this industry, which is probably the best part, and the memories that you get to make along the way. Not so much just the achievements, but just everything that you get to experience along the way on and off the stage. There's so much that there is to offer in this industry, with, you know, sponsors, companies you get to work with, the different opportunities you get to do, different photo shoots, traveling, all that kind of stuff is really fun. So I'm always grateful for that. My first Olympia, I was 10th. My second Olympia, I was 5th. My third Olympia, I was 2nd. And then my fourth Olympia last year, I won. So it definitely wasn't like I just showed up and got lucky. It was a long process, a work in progress. But that's, I think the best thing is just focusing on like steady improvement, like little by little. Don't try and just like think of, if you're climbing a mountain, I always say like it's just one foot in front of the other. If you're trying to get somewhere far, it's 1 mile at a time. You're not just going to shoot, you know, 10 miles at once, and every step you take is 1 foot at a time. You can't step 2 feet at a time. So just focusing on what's in front of you and little by little putting in the work, and eventually you'll look back and be like, what, like how did I get here? I feel like that's where I was, and I was kind of like, holy shit, did I just win the Olympia? Like, so it was one of those moments for me where it didn't even sink in until like a few months after. And then Mark was like, you know, like he's like, isn't that crazy that you're an Olympia champ? I'm like, I still don't even believe it. It's so crazy. So it's cool. It's just one of those things that you just do the work and you show up every day, and eventually that success gets rewarded. So it's a testament to just being resilient, always showing up and always improving.
That's so awesome.
It's awesome. We have such a good industry. Everyone always asks, like, if you didn't compete, what would you do? And I'm like, honestly, I'm not even sure where life would have taken me, but it's so crazy because I definitely did not think that I would be living in Vegas and doing what I do right now, but I'm very grateful for it because I have a pretty amazing life. So it's definitely awesome when you kind of end up like just kind of falling onto a certain path. And, you know, like I said, like I didn't know what competing was when I was in the gym. I didn't have any plans to qualify for Olympia. It kind of just happened. And it would just, like I said, 1 foot at a time. I wasn't looking far ahead. I wasn't planning to do anything. It just kind of happened by me putting in the work each day. And then, so one of the questions was, what was my feedback after last year's Olympia? So throughout the year, last year, my feedback was mainly just conditioning, which was my biggest thing trying to nail. Coming off of a full off season, that's usually the hardest thing, is getting your conditioning to be at 100%. Just because obviously, you know, if you have between shows, you're already stage lean. It's just those little tweaks. But coming off of full off season, you know, having a longer time in an off season, obviously there's going to be more body fat to get off and more weight to get off for that conditioning to be there. So conditioning was kind of like from Tampa to Nashville, from Nashville to the Arnold to Olympia. Every show last year was my focus was being like a little bit tighter, but erring on the caution side of not being too lean or too hard. So last year after Olympia, my feedback was like this much more conditioned, and they were like very specific about like, don't do this much, it just has to be this much. So like the tiniest bit more. Yeah, it's always such a fine line. They're like, it's like maybe like 0.2 of a pound or something, like so tiny. So they said, just bring the same look, don't change anything because this is a winning look. Just keep working on your stage presence and like a tiny bit more conditioning in the front, like that line down my leg, to separate my hamstrings and my quads in the front pose. So it was just like that little line there. So I've actually been training quads again because I hadn't trained quads for probably like 2 or 3 years just to keep my shape balanced. So I started incorporating some quad training again this off season, just because I feel like I've lost a lot of like detail and the density of the muscle from not training them for so long. But now that my physique is pretty balanced, I think I can add back in some quad training that I'm not going to look to grow my quads, obviously, but just for detail. So I think it is still important, even if you're trying not to grow a certain muscle, to still at least give it some stimulus so you can keep the details. Obviously, if you have to atrophy the muscle, that's a little bit different. If you have like massive quads or something you're trying to atrophy, then not training them is probably best for you, or different variations of training them fasted or type of circuit style training. But adding back the quads for me has been one of the main changes, just focusing on a little bit more details in my legs, like little things like that, for this year's Olympia. And then here, how have your values changed throughout bodybuilding career? They haven't. For me, it's one thing that's really important is staying true to who I am, my integrity, my values, my morals. And no matter how well or how poorly I do, I stick to my values and my morals. And I think that's really important, that whether you have success or not, I think it's important to stay true to who you are, no matter, how much success you do or don't have, just because who you are as a person and your character is something that stands forever. Accomplishments come and go, success comes and goes. You might be on top one day and, on the bottom the next day, but who you are as a person and your character is one thing that's, always sticks with you. So my values have not changed since I started, and that's something that will never change. I'm very strong on that. Staying true to who I am is really important to me. And I think that that's one thing that in our industry, especially, there can be a lot of ego and stuff like that. I think more so with the men, there's like that pettiness, the drama, but I don't do any of the drama. I stay in my own lane. I do my own thing, and I just do the work and show up and just be kind to everyone. I think it's underrated, being nice. Sometimes people forget that it's cool to be nice too. So yeah, that's probably my biggest thing. My values don't change no matter what, no matter how I may or may not be, and whether I win or whether I lose, it's always the same attitude.
Love it. That's why everybody loves you, Jen. You're nice.
I mean, I think sometimes people just get ego in the way, or they let their heads get too big, and I think it's important to remember that no one is better than anyone else. So, and the same thing, like if you win graciously. If you lose graciously, because in our sport, you're going to lose. It's like, it's impossible to not lose. You're going to lose more than you win, guaranteed. And if you can't handle a loss, with dignity and with grace, then you have work to do. Sometimes it's obviously hard. We get emotional, we work hard for it, but just being able to take a loss and be, I guess, grateful for what you can learn from it, because you're going to learn so much more from the times that you lose and the times that you win. Anytime I've ever lost or not done well, I've learned so much from that versus the times that you win. Of course, you learn every show, but I think when you lose, or like I said, that first time that I didn't win, that was the biggest fire lit underneath my butt, So I think that's always kind of the best thing, is sometimes a loss is a setup for a comeback, and it's the best thing that can happen to you. Even though at the time it might be devastating, it's usually something that's going to fuel you for something better.
True.
Yeah. Do you guys have any questions or anything you guys wanted to add in?
Question. It's a quiet group tonight. Arlene, were you trying to speak, Arlene? Arlene?
Hi, this is a simple question.
Oh, there you go.
Yes. What is your favorite protein and complex carbs?
Favorite protein? Probably ground chicken breast. I live off of ground chicken breast. So I find chicken breast, the actual texture of it, I'm not a huge fan of, especially if you're eating out of it. But ground chicken breast is a game changer. And it's the same, it's super low fat as chicken breast. So it's not ground chicken, it's ground chicken breast. You got to be specific when you ask for it at the store. And I usually cook it with cocoa aminos, and that's probably my number one protein. It's just the easiest to get down. It tastes the best. And complex carb, probably oatmeal. Honestly, I love oatmeal. Oatmeal and chia seeds together with fruit is so good. My fave.
Great, thank you. Never tried a ground chicken breast, but I will have to try ground turkey. Yeah, I had.
I used to like ground turkey, but I feel like I just try and stick to, when I'm sticking to just chicken breast or leaner meats, the ground chicken breast is just easier to get down than chicken breast. The texture, I think, tastes better, and you can see, I just like ground meat, I think, better than chicken breast. Chicken breast gets so dry sometimes, so.
Thank you.
Well, if no one else has any questions, we ran just a few minutes over at 6:06. So any other questions, anybody, before we let Miss Jen go? No?
No questions, but thank you.
Of course. Thanks for tuning in. It was good to see your face.
Yeah, I'm still like trying to finish off everything. The last bit for the night.
The last bit for the night. I know, because some of you guys are on Eastern time, right? So it's
Like 9 o'clock. So I got it in.
You gotta get that food in. I know I have to go eat soon too. I have to go feed my dogs actually, but this one is currently past.
That's cute.
He's super cute, but he's crazy.
Oh my gosh. So precious.
Thank you
Not
so much, Jen. We really appreciate you
course.
spending time with us.
It was so much fun. Thank you guys for having me and letting me share some of my journey and my stuff with you guys. Thanks for listening.
Thank you,
Thanks for
Jen.
on the call with me, you guys.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so
I
much.
hope you guys all have such a good night. Have an amazing week. Have a productive week.
Thank you. You too.
Sounds like somebody's hungry.
He's making me tired. I want to go to sleep now.
So cute.
Well, for
All
those
right, guys. Thank you
Pacific,
guys
have a
so
good
much
night.
for joining us. And then we'll send out information. We'll have this recorded. And so we'll have that link available. And then we'll keep you guys posted on our next call, which is scheduled in probably a month.
Yeah.
I don't have the date in front of me.
I don't know what it is either off the top of my head.
It's July 10th.
Perfect.
So July 10th will be our next call. And that one, we are going to revisit our Masters to Pro. So that will be Anne, Corinne, and myself will share our stories.
Yeah, I don't want to miss that.
That'll be a good one.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you guys. Have a great
you
week.
so much.
Thank you guys. Have a good
Thank you,
night.
ladies.
Good night.
Bye guys. Have a good
Bye.
week. Bye.
Everyone's
Hold on.
gone.
Let me stop recording. Hold on.